Right, that's that. Okay. Hello. Right, I think I know where I'm at. I'm going to run down some comments and then hop over to The Guardian and see how we go. All smartened up. Going to England on Thursday for about 10 days. Right. Confidence. In the stock market and shit like that. I wrote the answer that confidence, and if you're talking about confidence in the stock market, the big thing I renote is it's the beauty contest where you judge what other people may like. This is kind of important. And it makes the investment industry so frustratingly childish. Because, well, why did you buy that stock? I bought that stock because I think they'll buy that stock. I mean, it's just such an easy out for every single investing question that can ever be asked. And when it comes to confidence and selling up because there might be a crash, well, why are you selling your stock? What, don't you think they're good? Yeah, I think they're good. I think they're solid, they're reliable, and I don't think the market should crash. I think the fundamentals are there in place. But they're selling, so I've got to sell. It's just pathetic. The whole thing is just an excuse just to point fingers at everybody else. And everybody else points fingers at everybody else. There's no responsibility taken, and as soon as it's completely taken over by machines, the better. Because at least people won't be pretending that they're in any way because they buy and sell stocks for people. It's just, well, a lot of it's gone the way of index funds anyway. So, cryptocurrencies, quick one on that. Cryptocurrencies can never ever be a thing. They will never be a thing, because you'll never be able to do it better than the current people are doing it. And if you can, they'll make it illegal and they'll do it themselves. In other words, the central bank might have a very successful cryptocurrency in 20 years' time, but there is utterly no chance of any other cryptocurrency taking over anything at any time, ever. I could go into the details of why, but mainly it's because of costs. You just won't be able to have your cryptocurrency transactions costing less than normal currency transactions. You just can't do it. And you can say, well, it's the privacy. There's no privacy there. And if there was real privacy, the governments would find reasons to close it down because it was private. I mean, there's just no chance for cryptocurrencies at all. Blockchain will work on other things, but it will never work for a currency or even a secondary currency, or just won't happen. You just make a note of it, and so you can really insult me if it does happen, but I feel pretty safe on that. Immigration. Right, this is my link. The comment on the bottom comment on here is on immigration, and I'm going to go to The Guardian on immigration. For immigration and whether it is necessary, we have to look at Japan because we've got an experiment going. Japan will always refuse to have an influx of immigrants, and their economy is so twisted it's ridiculous. But it's doing all right. And other countries are just about doing all right. So the Japanese are doing all right on their way of doing things. Because the whole big point of governments roll over their debts. generation after generation, century after century, they roll over their debts. But other debts, personal debts, my debts, if I ever had any, don't think I ever have to be paid. And you've got to pay them back with money. And basically, there's got to be the money out there for me, if I had debts, to get the money in to pay off the debts that I have. There's always got to be lots of money to pay the debts. Don't worry about that stupid thing about they create the capital but don't create the interest. Forget about that. That's a ludicrous thing to say. It's because we're talking huge numbers here. We need bonking huge numbers of money out there to pay the bonking huge numbers of debts that are out there. I was going to go into it, brackets. Always remember when you talk about all these debts that there's always somebody on the other side. That's your accounting. Your debt, your liability is somebody else's asset. So if you get this strange idea of what's that biblical thing where you forgive all debts, don't forget, you forgive all the debts, which sounds lovely, but you'll be absolutely whacking all the people that have those debts as assets. Anyway, where were we going? Yeah, the money has to be there. So an aging society like Japan again, but we've done it, say Germany, running short of people that are going to be taking out loans. Taking out loans is putting money into the economy. Aging society, less money being put into the economy. Those with debts will have more of a struggle to find the money to pay the debts off. Whether this is a whole great big con by banks to say this is why we need inflation at 2%, always makes it 2% easier to pay your debts off, or this is why we need immigrants, or this is why we need banks. Nobody's really sure, because it's economics and nobody knows a shit about economics. It's a mystery. Too complicated, basically. You can have a few ideas, but basically it's too complicated. So you need somebody to take out the new loans to get the new money circulating, so the people with debts have that money out there so they can get it to pay their debts back. One idea, and it's pretty strong, is that if you've got a shrinking society, then to get more money into the society, then getting immigrants into that society is a good way of creating more money, which will make it easier for the people that were in, call it a Ponzi scheme, that were in first, to get the money that was created by the new people to pay off the debts that they created when they were at the bottom. And then so it shuffles on. And it's all part of this, does capitalism always need the economy to be? That's meant to be going outwards, upwards, bigger all the time. And again, it's economics, nobody knows. Japan is all the thing that's worth watching on this, because it's a live laboratory experiment. Okay, now some fella called Bloodworth has written a book, which I'm sure most people in the UK will come across soon, because he's gone and worked in Amazon and for Uber and some other places, which he calls the gig society. I think Uber is meant to be a gig, but I can't see working in an Amazon factory as a gig economy thing. It's just a job, and it's a bad job. Okay, so he's gone and worked there, and he's talked about why it's a bad job. It's hard work. The way I looked at it when I was young, in my 20s, I could work harder than anybody else. That's the way my mental thing was. I put some people against me. I can work harder. And when, say, I was in my 30s, I can work smarter. I can work better than they can. Call it. I think it's just normal. It's I don't know if it's a girl thing. It's a man thing. Girls competing would have to be a girl thing, or they wouldn't compete, because it's just what you naturally do. So this is a quote from the article about the book. So Bloodworth is the author. And this being in The Guardian is really quite a big do. I realise I'm 10 minutes in. That's fine. Immigration and class are now inseparable subjects. Now, I'm talking to English people here because Americans pretend that there's no class or something. Class is obviously huge. Immigration and class are now inseparable subjects. By Bloodworth's account, the native working class has respectable reasons to worry about mass migration, immigration. The recruitment agencies that supplied Eastern European workers to Amazon warned their workers, the Eastern Europeans, that if they made a fuss about their conditions, there was a reserve army of their fellow countrymen ready to take their place. Do I want to go into Nehru here? I really don't. And reserve army is kind of Marx. But you've got the idea, and it's been mentioned in The Guardian. Open like that, kind of glaring. So the commenter comes in, and this is the top comment so far, and it'll probably stay being the top comment. I think it's only just open for comments because there's only 23 at the moment, and I think this article is going to be a big one, so we could even have a look tomorrow. And there you have it, the real reason for free movement of people: to suppress wage costs and create conditions where people are afraid to complain. This is normal naughtiness in commenting. So Mystic comes in and says, no, it's a spectrum. It will be a spectrum. There you have it. The real reason for free movement of people is to suppress wage costs and create conditions where people are afraid to complain. It's obviously not the real reason. It is a reason that some people will have put forward at certain times. And there will be loads of other different reasons. Either good reasons, bad reasons, thoughtless reasons, sneaky reasons, toffee-waffy reasons, all sorts of reasons. It is not the real reason. It's one of the reasons. Never thought I would actually see it printed in The Guardian. The key reason for Brexit: lack of control and very frightened people scraping by in precarious jobs. If only politicians had grasped this basic fact. Now, the politicians one is very odd, because it kind of channels then. You've got all these reasonings across the spectrum, channels into a waste of spectrum of politicians, because you've got to kind of pass laws that allow these sort of things. There are influences, but they go into government and then have the ramifications coming out. So you've got smaller amount of reasons. That what was the real reason for the government at the time going with the idea of, okay, the free movement of people. You've got smaller amount of reasons, so it's realistic to look to see what government was up to. But the rest of the inputs are so multivarious that you'll never get them. What were government up to? Well, it was the EU. What was the EU up to? Again, it's multivarious, but I would have thought if it was anything, because for Americans, if you don't know, you think EU might be the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Greece and Ireland and that sort of stuff. But when the wall came down and USSR went away, and you've got all the Eastern European ex-communist states, the EU has expanded that way and involved them into the EU Union. So in this example, it was Romanians had been coming because they're now EU members. Must be. I can't confirm that, but I think that's it. Because they're EU members, they could come into Britain and work in Amazon, because there's free movement across the EU of capital and workers, of labour. So the British workers have to compete with Eastern European labour, and if they make a fuss, there's plenty of Eastern European labour to come in to replace them. So it's a class thing that if your politicians are toffs, if they're right-wing superior people, they'll take less notice of the working class people and won't mind so much pitting working class against the Eastern European working class. And this will bring myself in again. In my 20s, if I was pitted up against Eastern European working class, I might have thought the game was not quite as... I could go up against the people that I went to school with and grew up with, but then competing with somebody that's come from a different... How would I feel? I'm not sure. It's just different when you have to... You play the game against your mates, but to play an international when the international people might be playing by different rules, it does throw everything turmoiled. And another thing I couldn't be doing with is this. I know either in my 20s, 30s, now, ever could do with this. This is part of the main body of the article. Language was policed as thoroughly as every other aspect of the working day. This was working at Amazon. Bloodworth's supervisors told him he could not call the warehouse a warehouse. It was a fulfillment centre. No one Bloodworth met lasted the 9 months required for Amazon to give them a full-time job. Like worn-out machines, they were scrapped after 6, but their bosses did not sack them, they released them. Not that the bosses were bosses, everyone was an associate. I could never be doing with obvious bollocks like that. And at base, this caused Brexit because the people angry enough about this went out to vote and voted for Brexit. It wasn't the only reason, obviously. Everybody had their own particular reason, but a bulk of the working class went out and voted against EU because they were having to fight against Eastern European immigrant labour. And the people on the coast, the fishing rights and all that sort of stuff, but that's different. So the question I would be asking myself is Japan going to do better tweaking the rules on its solidly Japanese economy, or is the British economy going to do best basically putting everybody fighting everybody else, really serious fighting at the bottom, and that fighting obviously will get its way all the way to the top. In other words, to make a really... Well, it'll be nasty, won't it? It'll be a nasty society. But with all that aggression going on, the idea is that there's going to be movement. There's going to be stuff going on. And when there's stuff going on, all right, it's exploit. The only way of making profit is to exploit. That's the only way of ever making any profit. There'll be a lot of exploitation going on. There might be a lot of profit going on. If there's profit going on, people will borrow money to make that profit. Will that extra borrowing be enough for everybody to pay back their debts for basically the mortgages? There are loads of zombie companies in the UK now as well. Will that dynamism of being a nasty, aggressive, everybody against everybody society going to create enough action to create enough money to pay enough debts back? Technically it probably might, but I think I'd prefer to be Japanese.